get are three basic types of lies. You have the buried lie, where it's kind of about halfway or more down actually in the sand. I could actually step on it here. It puts it down in the sand pretty good. The next one is a very fluffy lie. Even though there isn't, this particular sand is pretty coarse, and it doesn't have a real powdery feel to it, we still have a very fluffy lie here, where the ball is sitting up on a tuft of sand. And then the third and final lie is the one that is basically on a hardpan, where there's almost no sand underneath the ball at all. It's almost just dirt there. If you look on the bottom of my sand wedge, the leading edge to this, underneath it where the sole of the club is, there's an extra amount of width between the leading edge and the back edge of the club. And this amount is called bounce. It's basically the thickness of the sole of the club. And here we're going to have my pitching wedge, which has a lot less on it. It's got a lot thinner of a sole to it. And generally with the thinner sole, you're going to dig into the sand a little bit more. With the thicker sole, or more bounce to the wedge, the more that it's actually going to bounce on the sand. Since it's going to have a lot of bounce to it, off of this hard pan lie, we probably don't want the bottom edge of the club to be bouncing on anything, because we really want to try to get a little cushion of sand between the ball and the club face. We want it to basically fluff out, like we're going to develop a pillow. We're going to try to create a cushion of a pillow between the club face and the ball. In order for me to do that, and I'll just show you right here, in order for me to do that, I'm going to need to dig a little bit to get some of that sand to come up on the face. You see that? I was able to dig, and I got some sand on the face. But if I bounce the club along the ground, I'm not going to get any sand on that club face, and there's not going to be any cushion. So for this specific shot, where I'm basically on hard pan, or very thin lie of sand, I'm going to want to be making sure that I'm actually digging a little bit into the dirt when I'm swinging. So on this particular shot, I'm going to be trying to make sure that I get to a line of about right here behind it, which is going to help me develop a cushion of sand. Now there's one of two ways that I can use this wedge in order to dig into the sand. I can either go with a pitching wedge, which has a lot less of the bounce to it, right? It has this very thin distance between the edge of the club face and the back of the sole. Or I can actually close this face down so that less of that bounce is going to be used. See, if I turn it in like this, now I'm going to be digging again. As you can see, when I close the face, I dig a little bit of sand. I build some up onto the club face. And that's basically what we're trying to do. So we can either close the club face and dig, or we can use a club that has has a smaller sole or a thinner sole of the club, and that's going to help dig it up. Now obviously, since I have a lip in front of me, I want to make sure that I have enough loft on the club that I'm still going to get the ball up in the air. Okay? So for this particular shot here, I'm actually going to go ahead and use my pitching wedge, because I know I can still get some pretty decent loft on it to get it up out of the bunker, but I'm still going to be able to get some sand before I catch the ball. Again, I'm making sure that I'm going to try to get some sand before I get to this ball, so I want to hit back here behind it. The next shot we have is very, very fluffy. Okay? We have a lot of sand that this ball is sitting on. And I want to make sure that I don't get too much sand, because too much sand is not going to allow for enough velocity of the ball to come out of the bunker unless I take a really, really big swing. So because this is starting to sit on a cushion of sand that's already there, I don't want to get too much sand, or else I'm going to cushion it too much. So I'm going to use a club that basically will bounce along the sand a little bit more and help limit how much sand is actually getting up on the face. So I'm going to go ahead and use my 56-degree sand wedge in order to hit this shot. If I use the pitching wedge, then there's a good chance that it's going to dig too much and get way too much sand. Now the way I'm going to utilize the utilize the bounce on this club is I'm going to open up the club face so that I'm making sure that this bottom edge here is going to actually hit the sand, so that I have this amount basically from the bottom of the club to the edge of the club is going to help make sure that I only get a limited amount of sand in there. So I'm going to open up the club face, but I'm going to make sure that the club face is still aimed at the target. I'm just going to adjust my feet open to correspond with how far open the club face is. That way I'm not opening the club face and making it go dead right on me. Again, I'm just going to bounce the club along the sand, still going for a mark right about at the same distance behind the ball as I had for my other shot. Now, again, you want to develop a certain cushion of sand between the ball and the club face, but sometimes you're going to be in a situation like this where there's just, it's almost impossible to get the right amount. So you have to make a bigger swing, have to hit it harder, and you're going to have to try to dig because you got to get to the bottom edge of this ball. So this one is a little bit trickier. You actually have to try, instead of being about 2 inches behind the ball with where we want to hit the shot, we actually want to get really close, and this is why this shot is so difficult. We got to get really close to where that ball is with where we're going to be digging in. This shot is going to come out a lot lower because we're not having any of that club face loft on the shot, okay? So it's going to come out lower, and we're going to have a lot of dirt stuck between the club face and the ball, and there's just no way for us to get around it. I'm actually going to go ahead and use my sand wedge and close it down a little bit. By doing so, I'm going to ensure that I'm digging, but I'm still going to have a little bit more loft on the club with this club than I would with this one. I just have to make sure that I don't let that bounce affect the shot. Now that you understand basically what we're trying to do for each one of those particular shots, let me talk to you a little bit about the setup and where you want the ball placement and your alignments when you're going to get up to hit this shot. For this particular lie, again, I have a relatively good lie. It's pretty fluffy, so I'm going to go ahead and use my sand wedge here. This is pretty much your normal bunker shot. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the club face, and I'm going to make sure that my alignment is to the left, which is about equal to how much the club face is open as well. Just to make sure that the alignment of the club face, again, is square to my target. Now, the question is, how much do we want the ball forward or back so that when we make this swing, the bounce of the club is going to strike the sand and still develop that cushion of sand between the club face and the ball. So my judgment is that I want, again, about 2 inches behind the ball is where I want to go. Okay, I want about 2 inches behind the ball is about where I want to hit it. So I'm going to actually address that 2-inch spot as about where I normally would put my wedge, okay, for just a regular shot that I'm just going to hit about 50 or 60 yards. I would address the ball right about there. So what that does is now that ensures that about the same spot that I would be hitting off of the grass is where I'm going to be hitting out of the sand. You see? So this spot is now my target. This is where I want to make the club enter the sand. We don't want to be so much focused on the ball. We want to be focused on that spot in the sand that we want the club head to strike. Bunker shots really aren't that difficult, as long as you understand that you're not trying to hit the ball. You're trying to develop that cushion of sand between the ball and the club face.